So I started playing soccer at a young age. I started at 3, 4 years old. Played soccer up until I was about 13, 13 years old. And when I was 13, I got into wrestling. Just because I wasn't able to join the high school soccer team, I went on to doing wrestling because of my best friend Oscar, which I know you guys saw in the back in Miami. You guys met Oscar, the podiatrist. He's the one that got me into wrestling. He's also the one that got me into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. But then I got into wrestling, American wrestling, and from there I did that up until I was 17, 18 years old. Did a little bit in college as well, and I haven't stopped fighting since. I started fighting. Well, I started working out when I was about 11 years old. Not the best age. I started working out when I was 11. My biological father bought me my first punching bag when I was about 9, 10 years old. When I was, there's a picture of me when I was about 2, 3 years old of me doing a fighting stance. So I've always been into fighting. I've always been into martial arts. I've always loved it. I'm passionate about it. And speaking about my biological father, because this is a huge part of my life, my biological father was a little bit wild. So I started seeing similarities. My biological father, right, he grew up, he was born in Bello, Colombia, which is still not known as the best areas, but he was raised in Medellin. And my biological father used to love getting into street fights. And yes, these are during the times of Pablo Escobar. So he was just this lone wolf, wild child, getting into fights in the street. And at some point, he got mixed in with the wrong person. He fought a cartel's child. He fought he beat the crap out of this kid that was the son of the cartel, and my grandma and my grandpa decided that he needs to leave, and my grandfather at the time was already in New York, so my grandmother decided to send him to New York to be with my grandfather because they're gonna kill him. So my dad was had to leave Colombia, had to leave the country, go into New York and just start a new life there with my grandfather. I gotta be completely honest. I promise myself I'm always gonna be as honest as possible, and this is probably gonna be the most transparent vlog that I make. And I'm not sure I'm gonna do this again, so I might as well just be as honest as possible. But my father, he grew up in New York. He got mixed up with a lot of rank people a lot of times. He just was this wild child. He got mixed in with different mafias, and my dad was wild. My dad got into the wrong crowd always. New York and New Jersey. Let's just say that he has a lot of experiences with the negative, with being getting into so many fights and getting into horrible situations where he just hung around the wrong crowd. The wrong kind of women, the wrong kind of men. Let's put it that way. And that in itself kind of scarred his chip, and he just couldn't come back from that. And I understand that. But then talking about my dad meeting my mother in New York, that's another story. Where my mother is this small little puny, beautiful, pure thing, and she migrated from Bogota to New York with her other siblings. Her 10 other siblings, is 11 in total, but one of them died at birth, so it was supposed to be 12. And my grandmother and her 11 children migrated to New York, and because my mom had so many siblings and my grandma had to just handle so many of them, she kind of had to learn a couple of things on her own as well. And then my scarred father meets my beautiful pure mother, and they cross paths. And for my mother, it wasn't the best experience. The next 24 years of her life, and it was a very different era of time too, right? The person you marry is the person you stay with. Now, how would I say this? My biological father, I love him and I respect him, and I understand that the things that he went through is very difficult. So I have a certain compassion for him. I understand that some people are just not able to make it past certain traumas. That trauma stunts them, and they stay there, and they drown. They drown with the trauma, and I believe that everybody starts their life neutral, and are naturally just good, because there's a lot of things in nature that are very vicious, but there's a sense of innocence and purity to that form of life. It's the lack of evil is just not present. So I understand that my biological father started there, and then bad things made him bad. Would I say he's evil? That's questionable. Only God can judge him in that. But starting with my mother, did my mother start to experience things that were bad and possibly evil to her? Yes. I don't want to make my biological father look bad. Like I said, I respect him, but this is just the truth. So then, I'm not going to go through that whole phase of certain experience, of everything detailed, but between the time I was born and the time he left my life when I was 15, although they divorced at 13, when I was 13, those certain experiences were my own war, right? My own, the household was tough, right? As for many of you as well. But so yeah, my biological father meets my mother. That is a clash of a lot of dark and light, I guess you could say. And then my first sister came to born, and then my middle sister, and then myself. I am the baby of the three. Before my stepfather, before my biological father met my mother, he had already been married before. So him with another woman, which I am close to as well, had my two older brothers. So it goes, Luis Fernando is my older brother. Then Dean is the one after him, right? Those are my two older brothers. And then my sister Monica, which you guys already met. My sister Karen, you guys already met as well. And then me. And then we also have, my father's child, my stepdad's child, Carolina, which is a year older than me. So it's Luis Fernando, Dean, Monica, Karen, Carolina, and me. I'm still the baby of the six. So those are my siblings, right? And then up until I was 15 years old, the ones in the household was my biological father, was my mom, and my sisters and I. Under the wrath of my biological father, every single day was dark. Let's just say the most technical words, and I want to remind you this: my mom raised me, my stepdad raised me, and my coaches and everybody raised me that, hey, you never use pity. So this is not a vlog to pity me at all. I don't like that. I don't want it. My mom always raised me, telling me like, hey, don't ever let somebody pity you. On the contrary, have them respect you. So we do have a sense of a lot of pride, but respect is very important. And I don't use pity. So please don't change it to something of pity, guys. But how would I say? Under the wrath of my biological father, we all lived physical abuse, mental abuse, emotional abuse, spiritual abuse, psychological abuse, to the point that he even used reverse psychology. There a lot of times growing up as a boy, from as long as I can remember, my biological father used to look at me in the eyes and break me, and he would remind me that he is king and I am not. And I was kind of more or less like his slave, and I had to live was for him, and I could never ever at any point come up to challenge him. So he would break my soul all the time. It's not something I'm proud to say. It's not something I wanted to say, but it's just, I gotta be honest. Man, this sucks. I have to do this, but I don't know if this is even okay, because I don't know if my mom, my sisters, want me to kind of portray this to the world, but we just lived a lot of different abuses, and there's a certain abuse that I didn't live that they did. And when I was 15 years old, after my biological father finally left, you gotta understand that for me it wasn't something that I was sad about. I was kind of happy that this man that was around and causing this sense of torture and pain and darkness was kind of I'm just happy for him to be out of our life. I didn't really see him as a father. It was difficult. I actually saw him as the predator that was gonna hurt my mother and my sisters. So growing up, as a boy, I would a lot of times get in between my biological father and my mother, because I wanted to, protect my mother. And although I was a little kid getting upset and mad, and I think that has a lot to do with why my memory is fails sometimes, because I saw so much red, meaning that I got into this sense of adrenaline, a sense of rush that my little body couldn't handle that sense of adrenaline, so it would just shut down. Because of stories that my mom would tell me, she would just tell me that I was just getting between my biological father and my mother so many times, so I wanted to protect. And I wanted to protect, and it sucked. As a little 4-year-old, 5-year-old, 6-year-old, whatever age, all these young ages, to be able to feel impotent and not being able to help my mother and my sisters while this form of abuse would happen. When these forms of abuse would happen. So I would just get really upset, and it hurt me so much not being able to do anything. So that started to pile up this energy, this potential, this buildup of energy, of impotency, not being able to do, not being able to help, not being able to save, not being able to do all this stuff, to not being able to be this person for my mother, for my sisters. It sucked, and I'm sure many of you can relate to that as well. Even if you were a little girl, a little boy doing this, it didn't matter. So that kind of got me into this mentality of like, I need to be able to do something. And although he wasn't a father figure, the good father figure, I still respect him and love him today, because if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have this build up. And yeah, that didn't lead me to the best relationships. I'm still single because I always went into mentality of relations with the mentality of trying to save, these women. And let's just say it's not healthy. But at 15 years old, that's when my biological father finally walked out of my life. He left to Texas, which ironically that's where I live now, not too far from where he lived. But at 13 is when my parents got divorced, and the way they divorced was kind of tragic as well. That's kind of weird. You could say it was kind of a form of, the situation was kind of a kidnapping, and police came, 1, 2, 3, 4 cops came. They had to call him out. He came out and he let us go, and we ran, and my mom took us, and we all cried on our way out, and we never came back, and we just stayed far away from him. And that was kind of how my parents got divorced, right? So after that, my mom had us go through so many psychologists, growing up, to make sure that we were sane, and through these psychologists, I started finding relief, and that I loved it. I fell in love with it. A lot of people tell me I should have studied psychology. For me, it was just a matter of health, of spiritual, emotional, mental relief, and physical relief, and etc. Like, every time I'd go to a psychologist, which shouldn't be confused with a psychiatrist. We never went to a psychiatrist. We went to a psychologist, someone that could help us understand our psychology, and why we go through and feel the way we feel and think the way we think, etc. Every time I went to a psychologist, I felt literally like a relief in my mind, like it would just relax, and I felt different every time. The beauty of psychology, guys. I definitely support. A good psychologist will help you progress internally. And let's just say that every time I went to a psychologist, because it brought so much relief, I fell in love with the art, and I just started to kind of take notice in the way they were doing it, the questions they were asking. I just wanted to learn for myself how to do this, because they were helping me, and I always understood and always believed that you could be self-sufficient. And then my stepdad came into my life when I was 15. When my biological father walked out, my stepfather came in, as my father. And don't confuse, the situation and the timing that my mom was single. They were friends before my biological father and my mother ever married. The Munoz family and the Lozano family. The Lozano family is my mom. The Munoz family is my stepdad and my father. Between these two families, they grew up together in Bogota, and in New York as well. And 3 of los Munoz are married with 3 of los Lozano. So they're family. They grew up together. So it was easy for my mom to fall in love. It was easy for my mom to fall in the arms of my stepfather, especially being so broken. And I remember I remember shaking my stepdad's hand and saying thank you. I shook his hand as a 15-year-old, and I shook it, and I told him thank you. Thank you for taking this position, because now I felt a little bit more free. I felt less worried. I just knew, ever since I saw my stepdad, I just knew that he was gonna take care of my mom. I knew it, and up until this day, he's done a spectacular, phenomenal job. He's done everything for my mom, and although my mom has gotten very sick throughout the years, her body has started to deteriorate and break down due to so much trauma and always being in fight or flight. My father, my stepdad, he's been there. He's paid for all of her medical exams. I mean, just everything medically. Even gave her a home, her dream home. He's taken her out to see the world. I always wanted to do that, give that liberty, to my mom, and I still wish to do it as well, which also leads me to these extremities. But of course, I want this channel to succeed, because I want my mother, and my father to find rest. I want to retire them. That's my goal. I want to help my siblings, my friends out, and I also want to help the human race progress. I want to help, this world progress. So, that's, you guys kind of get the gist of what built me up as a fighter, as a son, as a friend, as a vlogger, and etc. So, before, another thing I want to mention before we go on, the years after I was 15, the the time that I was, going through hell, my own personal war, my own personal hell, um, up until I was 15. In that age, in as a child and as a beginning adolescence, what formed that psychology. There was one key thing that also formed who I am, and that I possibly also get from my biological father. I'm technically technically a loner. So during these times, my mom wanted to make sure that I stayed healthy and I stayed outside the house to not experience more violence. She didn't want to experience more violence, so she had me in soccer, and I was just play soccer. So I lived, kind of this very weird life for a while, right? I was happy to be with my friends, play soccer, and when I was a soccer player, I was always one of the best. I was the striker. I was the one making goals. I was just happy. I had these highs, and then I would come home and it was just these extreme lows. So I tip topped, but because my mom just did everything possible to protect me and keep her children protected, without her wanting to, I kind of, grew up as a boy and finding all these things and going through puberty, going through just these findings of what it is to be a man on my own. And I did, and I got used to being on my own and kind of making myself happy. So self-love was a thing, taking the beauty out of that, right? Taking the grace out of those tragedies. I saw that I found self-love and I was really good at it. And then, going to psychologists, I was able to help myself, and that self-sufficiency to be able to help myself progress was beautiful. So that kind of makes me, my essence is in that. Of course, after I was 15, and my father would agree. This is my stepfather. I was, I was a little bit, I was 15-year-old man. I was a little bit of a rebel, but not that much. I was always a good kid. Technically, I always had good intentions. I was just happy to be alive. I was happy to be outside of those times of hell, and so I was just more, I was just happy, and I was just now just being a teenage kid. As a wrestler, I was competing. I was fighting and I was working since I was 12, 13 years old. I had my first job. My mom always wanted me to have my own thing, so I had my first job at 13. I had my first checking account when I was 15. My mom helped me get my first credit card when I was 15 as well. So my mom really put in a lot of important things for life from the time I was a kid. So she wanted me to learn how to handle credit and learn how to handle money. And although I didn't do it good, and I think she knew I wasn't going to do it good when I was 15, I remember getting my first credit card and spending it all. So, but it right off the bat, she wanted me to learn how to handle money. So I had my own job, and with that job, I was able to get my first car and my first cell phone, the Nokia, that badass Nokia that you could use to put under a building and it would not collapse. So that Nokia, and so I learned to be a little bit more independent, and then my stepfather was there to just discipline the crap out of me. You can imagine, like, he came in and so talking about my stepfather, he grew up in Colombia. He was a cameraman for a news company in Colombia, and he has more extreme experiences than me and a lot of people. I mean, he's been through, and he was a cameraman during the times of Pablo Escobar, so he was around, these areas where Pablo Escobar would go, and Popeye, and he was around these crazy, bombings and these crazy cartel fights, and he had to live all that, be around that, and he was also a wild child as well. So, and guess what? He also did martial arts. He's the one that taught me. When he came in when I was 15, he taught me how to box, how to kickbox, and how to do karate. And between wrestling, kickboxing, boxing, and karate, I would always be in the backyard fighting. And then he brought to me Bruce Lee, and who better for the fighting world than Bruce Lee? Like, I love Bruce Lee, and So I started learning Bruce Lee. I started learning so much of his philosophies, and my stepfather brought me a lot of Eastern philosophy, Eastern medicine, Eastern beliefs, just a lot of Eastern things, and it just came perfect for me. Kind of this meditation, this understanding your sense of energy, chakras, understanding just so many things. And my stepfather would also challenge me when I was young. He was just disciplining me hard. Everything he knew, he would just apply it to me. I mean, he always wanted a son, and I'm his son that he's always wanted, and I've always wanted a father. So I mean, I feel like we were meant for each other, and it was beautiful. And he told me one key thing, and which is very, very important to who I am today. He told me one day, hey, if you can't use your spirit, your heart, your mind, your body, your environment, the astronomical and the supernatural, all at once, you're not ready for life. You need to be able to use everything at all times. If you can't find the right flow, the right way of living to be able to use all these things at once, you're not ready for life. So that was a huge challenge for me as a 15-year-old. I was like, whoa, I'm 15, 16 years old, and I'm already being challenged in a way that, I never thought possible. I think it was awesome. So from there, I just started studying spirituality, emotionality, intellectuality, psychology as well. Everything physical, everything environmental, supernatural, and astronomical. And I kept trying to, theorize and philosophize with him, and we would just, stay up many nights just talking and theorizing, and kind of, and he would just brought everything that he knows of his mind and his experiences onto mine, and we would just mesh minds, and we would mesh minds with my mom too. So it would just be the three of us, and we just have this tradition where my stepdad and my mom and I just, sit down at night, we eat, and we just talk. And of course, these conversations would get heated sometimes, especially when I was 20 years old, when I had my first major accident, in which we already talked about. After that 2-week span where I had my first major accident, where Rafa disappeared, where my grandfather started to pass away, where all my friends' parents had open heart surgery, where I'm living my second life. That time was brutal, because that just woke me up, right? It just woke me up. It broke my paradigm, my mindset. And I decided to go with the church to Bosnia. And I went to Bosnia. I found an opportunity. They were going to a pilgrimage in Bosnia, and I said, hey, that's my chance, because I want to theorize. I want to put any philosophy and theory to practice. And because I had been doing it for so many years, and after my first major accident, I wanted to prove that everybody wants love. I'm like, there's no way that I'm around all these criminals, these people that are just leaving, prison, and I'm around just so many people in the street, in these hoods, gunshots over here, and I'm growing up in Miami, and there can be all this chaos, and so many people hurting each other, and so much pain, and nobody really wanting love. So I found my chance to put myself in a theoretical, scientific way, in a culture where I couldn't understand the language, the culture. I couldn't understand anything, and I could just study humanity. So I went to Bosnia, and I went with a pilgrimage, and it was about 26 people in total, and there was a priest and 24 women and one child. And kind of the joke is, in the Latin culture, what they would tell me when I was over there would be like, bendito entre las mujeres, the one that's blessed with the woman. And I never looked at it as, oh, it was women. I was just a young one. I was there to explore. I was there to challenge my theories, And I was walking around Bosnia by myself. I never went with them, and they would get really upset with me, to the point that even the priest grabbed me from my ear and said, you're defying everything and all the laws, and you have no respect, and and I just told him, look, I think this is what God wants me to do. You know, this is what I'm out here to do. I'm out here to study humanity. I'm out here to theorize. I'm out here to help a God, because you know a God saved me. Yes, after my first major accident, I was like, you know, I thanked the God, and I was like, you know what, my life is not yours. I vow to help you with your people. So, you know, I'm a 20-year-old kid just walking around Bosnia, not knowing what to do. I'm exploring these mountains, and it went great. And it was the best time of my life. It was the most high I had. And they left. I was supposed to go back with them, and the Mexican lady that I was supposed to come back with on the airplane, because she was scared of flying. I was supposed to be next to her. That Mexican lady, right now, I'm going to tell you, I'm so sorry I didn't go with you. I apologize, because I was supposed to go back with you to help you with your fear of flying, and I didn't. So sorry, I apologize now. But that's where things started to change for me. I left. I was in Bosnia, and I was working. You know, I started writing all these things in a journal. I brought a journal, you know, a brand new journal, and I was gonna write all my theories and all my things in there about why everybody wants love. And while studying, you know, all these human beings in Bosnia, from Bosnia I went to Croatia, from Croatia in Italy. So. And I went to Rome, went to Vatican City, and I just sat down for a whole month and a week in Bosnia, Croatia, and Italy, just theorizing and just trying to prove to see that everybody wants love. That's what changed my life. I came back from that trip, and although I had argued with my mom, almost fought my stepfather because I was just being completely rebellious, I felt it in my core. And that was the first time where I felt a calling, and I said, I have to go over there by all means. And I did. And I came back. And I'm happy I did it, because it changed the rest of my life. And I came back, and my goal was actually to go and speak with the Pope. I actually thought I was gonna, you know, go and speak to the Pope and try to talk to, you know, the Vatican, and trying to help me start a foundation to help the people in Miami. That's what I wanted. I was this 20-year-old kid walking into, you know, places of the Vatican and Vatican City, you know, trying to get a meeting so they could help me create a foundation to help Miami. I had a little bit of success. I went straight to Rome. I found the directory of the Vatican, and back in Bosnia, I had gotten this connection of this man named Antoine, I think it was, yes, Antoinette, no, not Antoinette, Antoine, this French guy that runs the international pilgrimages of Vatican City, and back in Bosnia, they told me that he could possibly help me. So I found him, found his address, went to, you know, the directory is public, so I found his address, found his office. I went up to speak to the receptionist, which was writing for the New York Times. She had written for the New York Times, but she was now writing for the Rome Times. In which, if you are watching this, and hopefully do watch this one day, you that met me, I don't remember your name, but I know you wanted to work with me, and I never gave you a chance. But I also thank you as well, because you're the one that allowed me to feel more confident and belief in myself, because she allowed me to speak to Antoine. She was obviously the first man, the first person, kind of the first guard, you know, and being the receptionist and also being the writer for the Rome Times and for Antoine as well. She was the person that was responsible for allowing people through or not. So the first stage was her. She allowed me through. Then there was another person that I needed to speak to, and I spoke to her and told her why I was there, and I told her that someone that he knows referred me, and I was able to pass that stage as well. And she spoke to him, and he came back, and he asked me, you know, why I was there. I explained to him, and I gave him the name of the guy that had referred me to him. He came back. He left his office, came back and said he can't recall who that is, because there's so many people that he handles, that he talks to. And I just told him straight. I told him, hey, look, I travel across the world just to be able to speak to him. And I'm all dirty and my beard's longer and I'm a mess. And he sees this and he gave me an opportunity. He did. The coolest thing is that he asked me, do you have somewhere to stay? And I said, no. I spent all my money already. I did. I was already broke. And he said, all right, that's fine. He put me into this this house that was affiliated with important people from the Vatican. And so I went straight over there and I had gourmet food, all I could eat, steak, all I could eat, whatever. Like, it was just amazing. I mean, imagine me traveling through Bosnia, Croatia, and through Italy and to get to Rome, and I'm starving. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just a 20-year-old kid trying to make things happen. And he gave me the opportunity, and now I'm in this Vatican affiliated house, and I'm eating good. So I feel like I made it. Then I saw the room. The room was about 2 stories tall, marble on the floor, marble walls. I mean, I was like, I made it. I mean, guys, I'm gonna do this. And I started calling out my friends, I calling out my family, letting them know, hey, you guys, because I was already telling them about everything I was doing. And I was like, hey, look, I'm gonna make it. I made it. I am here. I had the meeting the next morning, and obviously it didn't go well, right? I was just another 20-year-old kid trying to make things happen. And I respect him and I understand, But after that, I felt like I had failed. And I was broke, but I didn't give up. For 8 days more, I was broke and I was trying to make things happen, and that in itself is another story. But yeah, I was kind of this poor kid walking around Rome, from the U.S. and from this Colombian American, just walking around, and I ended up throwing myself to the U.S. Embassy because I heard I could come back to the U.S. With their help, and they offered me a loan, and I said sure, but they gave me a phone call, and I called my mom, and you can imagine my mom was ecstatic. She was completely, I hadn't spoken to her for a couple of days, and you can imagine a mom knowing that her 20-year-old kid just went to Bosnia. That must have been very hard for her. I made my mom cry a lot, and so I apologize, Mom, but and I keep kind of putting her heart on the line, just me being here in Chechnya and all that stuff. But I spoke to her. She was crying. She was cussing me out, and I told her, "Look, I'm alive. I just need a ride back." So she bought me the first flight out, and I was able to go from Rome back to Miami, and I kind of got the silent treatment for a couple of days. My stepfather didn't talk to me, Mom didn't talk to me, and nobody really understood what I was doing, and neither did I. I just felt a calling, and a couple of days later, I started to remember, hey, I've written stuff. Let's see what that's about. And without me noticing, that composition book plus extra papers were all filled. And not just that, and not just was each sheet filled, I also was writing around each of the pages because I was running out of space. And I started to write going backwards. So I would finish I finished the journal, but then I started to write going backwards around what I had written because that's the only space that was left. So I had to go backwards. And then I had extra sheets of paper. Then out of nowhere, I started looking at everything I was writing, and I realized, you know what? I think I have a book. And that's where the creation of my book started. That's where things really changed for me. And so I started talking to my dad, and I was in college at the time. To be able to go to Bosnia, I left school, I left work. I sold my car through parts. I sold everything. And you can imagine how my parents were upset, worried, because I'm leaving everything just to go to Bosnia. Doesn't make any sense. And that's how strong of a calling I felt. And so that's what I experienced. I left everything just to go to Bosnia. I came back, and they're like, look, you did what you did, now focus. And I did. I started to focus. I went back to school. I bought a car. I started working again, and I turned everything that I wrote into a book. And then I told my dad, look, I think I want to write. And he because he was into so much journalism, into the news, and into so many things like that, he kind of put in me to be this writer, to be this kind of journalist. So I wanted to I wanted to study photojournalism, photography and journalism. I was always into filming. I was always into photos. I was always into that as well, on top of so many other hobbies that I have, which is, building performance cars, drift cars. I've always been, some things that I've always done my whole life was, martial arts, soccer, building and working on cars and fixing cars, and which we could talk about that afterwards. What else? I always loved movies and photography. I never had the chance to go into it because I grew up as an athlete, but I saw an opportunity to finally be able to study, photography and whatnot. And so one thing led to another, and that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to write. I found a love in writing. And how would I say? 7 months after I came back from Bosnia, something crazy happened. My mom and I are trying to go north of Miami, Fort Lauderdale, to register a car I bought because I had already sold my car. I had left school, I had left everything, so I had to restart everything. So I started working again, and I started going to school again, but I didn't have a car. I was using her car. And we were going up to Fort Lauderdale to register a car I had just bought, another BMW E36, guys, for those that know. I have a BMW E36 M3 with the 2JZ, but we won't get into that. We were going up to register this 1994 BMW, and before we left, my mom told me, "Hey, can you take out the propane tank and the baby seat?" Because my sister had just had a baby. She said, "Can you put those two things in the trunk?" And I said, "My mom, nah, mom, for what? We'll be fine. We're good. Let's just go." She goes, and I was all excited to go register the car. She goes, "Can you get the propane tank and the baby seat and put it in the trunk?" And I said, "Nah, mom, nothing's gonna happen. We're good. Let's just go." And she's like, she goes, "Okay, can you at least get the propane tank and put it in the trunk?" And I was like, "Fine. All right, let's go." I got the propane tank, put it in the trunk. We start driving. I drive. She's in the passenger seat. We start driving north towards Fort Lauderdale, and there's nobody in the street. We're in the turnpike. We're going north. The turnpike is this highway in Florida, and that goes through the north to the south of Florida. But we're going north in the turnpike. I was hitting around 70 miles per hour, and I'm just driving. There's nobody around us. I'm just driving, and I know where the two right tires on the right side blow up, and the car does whatever it wants. The car lost control, did this 180-degree angle. So basically, we're going north, and it pops, and it just swerves and gets, like I said, it swings around to a 180-degree angle, and just poof, hits the wall. The last thing I saw, because I was driving, I saw my mom hit her side, and I just saw her go like this. It hit her wall, it hit her side, and I just saw my mom, kind of, rebound off of that hit to the wall. It did hit her side, and that's all I remember. Next thing I know, guys, I'm in this eternal white space. I've said this like a million times, but I guess this would be my first time telling you guys, and I'm still kind of weird about telling you guys, but hey, it's the truth, it's my truth, and it's what I lived. All I remember is being in this eternal white space, and the sky and the floor, you could tell the difference between whites, shades of white. By the way, I've never seen these shades of whites ever again. I'm 100% in this dimension, in this world. And there's a white sky and a white floor, and it's eternal, but you could tell what is the sky and what is the floor by the shades of white. So I'm just there 100% like the way I am today. I'm experiencing that life. And I'm just existing. Imagine the spirit without the body. Huge, immense amount of energy. I'm just existing. Next thing I know, about 15 feet away from me, there's this woman. I don't know who she is, but there's this woman looking straight at me. And she's looking straight at me. She has this long brown hair, black hair. She has a long black dress on from, she was basically all covered. The only thing you can see is kind of her hands, her neck, and her face. It's completely covered. And she's just looking at me. She doesn't say not one word. She's looking at me and she's connecting. She's communicating. She's talking to me through her heart. And I understand it perfectly, like it was second nature. It was like as if she got her heart and put it into mine and we were just communicating. And of course I'm in awe, and I don't know what this dimension is, and I'm not aware of everything that happened. I'm not aware of anything. I'm just existing. I'm sure if I would have stayed there longer, I would have learned that this was, the life after death. But I guess you need to work fast because, my body, was doing its own thing. But I felt like I was there for like 30 minutes. And within those 30 minutes, she was communicating with me through her heart. And she was telling me how much she suffers seeing the world suffer. The pain that I felt in my heart was astronomical. She told me so many things. But the main thing was the fact that she was telling me how much she suffers seeing the world suffer. And how much she cries and how much she prays that the world would be better. And I was there for like 30 minutes with her. I mean, it really wasn't an exchange because I wasn't able to exchange emotions. I was just receiving that. So it wasn't an exchange. It was just her feeding into me her heart and her emotions, and it was just probably the most painful thing I've ever felt in my life. And I'm just there sitting, looking at her, or standing, or just looking at her. I'm not sure. I was probably floating. And out of nowhere, someone speaks to me, actually using words. Someone speaks to me in my ear. I don't see where it comes from. I wasn't able to see because I'm focused on her. Someone speaks to me in my ear. It's firm. Yes, it is masculine. It's powerful. Full of abundant love. Strict. And completely direct. It speaks to me in my ear, right here. And tells me, publish the book. That's it. Like within a couple milliseconds after he told me, publish the book. I didn't see where it came from though. Because I'm focused on her. And I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know anything. I'm just existing. I'm just receiving her energy. And someone speaks to me in my ear and tells me, publish the book. Wake up. Wake up in my body. Poof. I wake up in my body and what I see in front of me is the engine. The front of the car was just steaming, and to my left there's this guy trying to take me out of the car. And to my right, I look to my right, and my mom has me from my head. And I don't recognize anything in this world. I don't recognize this world. I don't know why I'm there, who I am. All my who, what, when, where, whys, and hows, and everything, they were all gone. I was just existing again. I didn't recognize this world. And I just knew, by looking at my mom, I didn't know who she was. I just knew she was important to me. That's all I knew. I looked at her and I just know she was important to me. But she had me from my head. She was holding my head up, and I was bleeding out of the side of my head. And her hands were full of blood. And it was just so many things going on. The guy was able to open up the door, get me out. He got me around the side of the car, closest to the wall, because he wanted to keep me safe. And I go to my mom and I'm like, Ma, why are we here? Like, I just knew she was important to me. I knew she was taking care of me. And I said, why are we here? Who, when, where, why, and how? I was like, she's like, you don't remember anything? I'm like, no. I got my phone, my Nokia. I got my phone out, and I was looking through my phone, and I was like, who are these people? I started calling them, and they would pick up, and I would just hang up. And the rest was, I remember being put in the back of an ambulance. I was sent to the hospital. In the hospital, they gave me the metal staples in my head, and after like 4 or 5 hours, I started to regain memory. But the only thing that was burned in my mind, the only thing that had existed for me, was the experience in this other life, and this world was new to me. And ever since then, I was like, okay, there's something about this book. Let's get it published. And from there on forward, now I have my first major accident, my second major accident. And to kind of skim through the other ones, my third, fourth, and fifth. The third, it was an incident, not an accident. It was in Colombia. I collapsed. Long story short, I had a girlfriend in Colombia. Went to go visit her. I took that time to take advantage to, kind of rekindle, my relationship with my biological father, all of his family, and try to take advantage of the fact that I was studying online, so I wanted to be able to spend time with her, because she was my girlfriend. So I wanted to be a good boyfriend and be there and spend time with her. And for about 6 months, the first month we didn't go well. Let's put it that way. I find out, she's still over her ex, and although I respect her, I understand that the distance and the circumstances wasn't the best. Kind of broke my heart. And now I'm in a country that's not mine, in a language that I don't usually use, because down in Miami we use Spanglish. And all the stress started to build up, and next thing you know, a month later I collapse. After an argument with her, I collapsed in the street of Colombia, because I did the whole American thing. You just walk out, breathe, and I just started walking towards her apartment, where I was obviously welcomed. Her mom, I was staying with her mom and her in their apartment. So I just started walking towards there, and I ended up collapsing. I ended up convulsing. I ended up, just so many things happening to me. And because I didn't have any papers, the Colombian hospital wasn't able to help me. And so, long story short, they tried to help me, but they ended up making it worse. They gave me a shot of benzodiazepine, which is meant to relax the body and relax the heart. They gave me an overdose of benzodiazepine because I was convulsing. They gave me that, and that was kind of the cheap solution because I didn't have papers. And they just got me out of the emergency room and left me in the hall because I didn't have any papers. That's when things were rough in Colombia, and it was about prioritizing those that you need to save. And they felt like they had saved me and that I was going to be fine, but they didn't realize that they had overdosed me. And in the hallway, I was just, I don't know, that's when to me, it was my second time. It was my second near-death experience. I know I talk a lot. That's why I'm a vlogger. That's why I'm a YouTuber. I'm going to go ahead and move the seat and get some better lighting, and so I can talk to you guys about the rest of why the hell I'm in Chechnya. So, but let's go ahead and keep talking. So that brings me to my second near-death experiences. So yeah, the nurses there did everything possible to make sure that I survived, that I lived. That they had to prioritize other people as well. And so they gave me this shot of benzodiazepine to lower down my heart rate, to keep me from convulsing and possibly having a heart attack or a stroke or whatever it is. They did the right thing. They left me in the hallway, and they just, I guess, would just pass by, make sure I wasn't dead. You gotta remember, guys, and this was 14 years ago. this was a time where even Colombia was struggling as well, and for them, people dying was just a thing, was normal. So they did their best to make sure I just didn't die, and guess what? I didn't die, but as I was, going through this overdose that I didn't know of course, and I don't know what's going on, and I don't know where I was at. I didn't know anything. All I remember is separating from my body, seeing my body convulse at one point, and then and I could kind of hear everything, but I can't respond, and my body's just doing its own thing, just breakdancing there. And they take me to the hospital. I somewhat remember the emergency room, and then next thing I know, I'm just like, I just remember separating from my body, going from this dark consciousness to into a light, not a tunnel, but it just transitioned from dark to the light, kind of fading into light. And I faded into light, and now I'm in this white space area again, which I've seen already. And next thing I know, there's two people in front of me this time. There's a man to my left, and there's a woman to my right. And I was a little bit more conscious then, and I guess I'm starting to get used to this. And I just asked him, and I tell him, like, what's going on? What's going on? Without me talking, I guess. I'm not sure. I don't remember if I had verbally told them or not, but I just asked them, like, what's going on? And they looked at me. One is to my left, one has long hair, a beautiful man, and then a lady to my right, beautiful woman. And I just asked them what's going on, and they're like, relax, just be patient, everything's gonna be fine. And I'm like, and they're like, everything's gonna be fine, just be patient. I was like, okay. So I guess I just stood there floating. And next thing I know, bah, I hit my body. I'm able to open my eyes. I'm like, and I was about conscious for about like 15 seconds. And I see my ex-girlfriend crying, her mom in the back, talking to her. And I fall again. And I'm in front of these two beings in this white space again. Then I hit my body again, wake up, and next thing I know, there's nobody around. And my ex-girlfriend's mother comes up to me and says, hey, you're good, you're fine? And I'm like, yeah, I just don't know what's going on. And she said, well, look, I contacted your biological father, because my biological father was managing, and she told me, hey, look, just to let you know, I talked to him, he doesn't want to come because he doesn't want to pay. He says, you got yourself into this issue, you got to get yourself out. And they contacted my mother and my stepdad, and my parents, ended up, paying for this, for the situation, for all the treatment I had in the hospital. And at that moment, I felt abandoned completely by my biological father. And I'm not, in that situation, I wasn't surprised. And we haven't really spoken about that since. But I do plan to talk to him about that. Because the situation is a little shady, a little weird. I don't know if he actually abandoned me because of money, or understanding my dad now. I've been more, my biological father, I've been around him more, and I understand that the way he was raised is very difficult for him to manage his emotions, and he doesn't know, he just goes into shock, which I get. And so I got to see more into that situation, but at that moment I just believed what she said, and I believed that I was abandoned, so I felt like I was left for dead. And That was my second near-death experience, my third incident within a 5-year span. The fourth one was I was going to UCF. So because I had this strong message and this strong belief that the book is something, I decided to be self-sufficient. You guys already know. You know, I was taught to be self-sufficient by my mother, my stepfather, life, etc. So I decided, all right, I need to learn how to write. And so I moved from Miami to Orlando to go study photojournalism. And I went to the University of Florida. Very great school. Very happy I went there. But the first class of journalism was media law. And within the first 10 minutes, I realized this is not what I want to do. I did not like journalism because of the strong sense of you need to write what you see and that's it. And this is what we're writing, this is what we're talking about, and that's it. So I got that just very fast, very quickly, and I said, this is not for me. So I left class after already moving to Orlando and taking all these risks and going through what I've already been through. I went to my advisor and I told him, hey, look, I don't want to do photojournalism. I like the photography side. I want to do photography side, but I don't want to do the journalistic side. It's not for me. And I asked them, what else do you have that's involved with writing? And they said, we have English literature, creative writing in the arts and humanities department. And you want to try it out? And I'm like, sure, I'm already here. I already started a new life in Orlando. Why not? And I fell in love instantly with the degree. And I started learning about, all these different countries that shared the English literature. And I learned about, also about France and England and, just a lot of world topics as well. And I fell in love more with the degree because of the fact that it had a lot to do with the arts and humanity factor. And you already know I had already been studying humanity in person. By then, I was already traveling the world trying to study humanity in person and trying to get as many perspectives as possible to be able to understand as many humans as I could and as many cultures as I could, because my goal one day was to become a public figure and publish the book as well. So during that time, I just learned how to write. I did fall in love with it. I was wrestling as well for a little bit for UCF and didn't keep on going with the martial art because the girlfriend that I just mentioned that was in Colombia, she's a doctor now, and at that time she was doing her residency, and which I know by me going to Colombia stressed her out as well. But in her being a doctor, she was telling me, do you look at your body, you have I'm still healing from concussions. I need surgery in my shoulder and my knee. I have two herniated discs in my lower back, twisted vertebrae, two bulging discs, etc., etc., etc. I need surgery in my nose because I haven't been able to breathe from my nose since I was 16, 17, which I just recently found out in the last year or two. So I need nose surgery and so many things going on in my body. And she goes, do you really want to keep fighting? And I'm like, and the way she just convinced me, and because I was doing NCAA, I was in the NCAA D1 division, I decided, you know what, maybe it's not worth it. So I stopped wrestling, and my heart, it sucked because I've always wanted to be a champion in a martial art, and I think I remember talking to my coach back then, and we had talked about the fact that in my wrestling career I wasn't able to become a state champion. I never got my opportunity because the first year I was learning how to wrestle, and the first 3 years I was basically wrestling off or fighting for the weight division and against people that became state champions, that were second in the state, that were fifth in the state, and had done, just an incredible job in wrestling. Now I was this new guy. So I wrestled amongst badasses. I wrestled amongst, just really good wrestlers. And senior year, when I finally had my opportunity, um, 2 weeks before districts, which districts is the start of the state champion road. You have districts, regionals, and states. 2 weeks before, in a similar competition that's compared to the state competition. They say if you win this competition, you'll win the state competition, or more than likely you would. I was able to get to the semifinals in this competition called GMACs, and the guy was able to do a move on me, and he slammed me straight on my hip and gave me my two herniated discs, and that kind of finished my wrestling career back in high school. And let's just say that knowing what I know now, I should have never allowed him to pass my guard and to be able to do that to me. So maybe I would have been able to become a state champion, but I definitely trained extremely hard to the point that I even had, almost had kidney failure at one point. I had blood from my stool at the time. I mean, I just did everything possible to become a state champion. So in my mind, I was training to become a state champion. And so I took everything with me, and I applied that to life. And talking to my coach about how I wasn't able to become a state champion, I dedicated 4 years nonstop, sacrificed everything. He told me, sometimes it's best not to become a champion, because sometimes by reaching the peak, you just stop. And so I stayed hungry. I stayed on fire. And to me, doing what I'm doing now is a form of me coming back to what I've always loved. And I'm happy I'm doing it. I'm doing it in Russia. I'm doing it in different countries. And now I'm just filming it. So, which I know we still haven't been able to get to that. But we will. We shall find martial arts in Chechnya where we are allowed to fight, and not just in the street. But we'll get to that. And my fourth and fifth accident, the fourth one, I was dating this girl. I was driving 3.5 hours to see her. On the way back, I forgot to replace my rear tires because I was still into these rear-wheel drive. I mean, I still am. I still had a BMW 98 rear-wheel drive E36 328 IS. I forgot to change the rear tires, and there was this huge storm, and I just lost control, and bam, I hit a guardrail. By then, my frame of mind I didn't have one. So I was completely open to life, and I was just getting used to these brutal things. And the fifth accident was I bought a second car, and it was another performance car, and someone came and just rear-ended me after somebody cut off someone in this heavy traffic, and we're going from 0 to 50, 0 to 60 real fast, and just stopping, and the person behind me didn't see that we had just immediately stopped. And the person behind me was looking down, and bam, hit me at 40-50 miles per hour, and while I was in a complete stop, which that's what gave me my 2 bulging discs in my neck. And let's just say that it wasn't something I expected or something that I wanted. And so I got used to these accidents. I got used to these extremities. And up until now, I did graduate as a writer in English literature in the track of creative writing in the Department of Arts and Humanities at 24 years old. All these things happened, by the time I was 25. Up until now, I've been to 23 countries, and I studied those 23 countries in person, and we could possibly talk about that next time. I've met over 15,000 people. I've helped a ton have helped me. I've learned from everybody. And as you can see, this has been my life. I've always been challenged. I've always wanted to push myself more and more, and there's so many things about me that yes, I am a man, that's very confident, but there's still a lot of things that I need to personally get to. 1, publishing the book. 2, if God allows, becoming a public figure. My goal for this channel um, is to have great success with this channel so I could be able to publish the book by myself on my own. When it comes to the book, I did meet with 2 publishing companies, and I told them no because they wanted 85% of the book, and I wasn't about to give up a book that could potentially do something. Now, I don't know if it's going to do something or not. I just lived that experience where somebody told me publish the book, but I'm not willing to take the risk and give it to somebody else and put it in their hands. God gave it to me. Or what I feel, it was a God that spoke to me, told me, hey, publish the book. And so it's in my hands. I'm not about to just give it up to anybody. So luckily and fortunately, I was born in an era where social media is huge. So I could do everything on my own. Back then, the YouTube wasn't a big thing. And this was only 14 years ago. Back then, it wasn't a big thing. And I had to figure out how to become something or publish the book on my own without losing the book and the control of the book and the power of the book. And I remember back then listening to motivational speakers, and they were saying that, hey, sometimes it's better to not all right, switch it up a little bit because my hand is hurting, but I remember listening to a motivational speaker saying sometimes it's better not to become what you want to become before your character has developed, because when you reach a point of fame, a point of power, without the maturity of your character, you lose everything you gained because you don't know how to handle it, you know how to manage it. Your principles and your morale and your priorities are just not aligned enough to be able to keep it. So give yourself a chance to grow. Trust the process, trust the process, trust the process. So I'm trusting the process, and that process has brought me to so many adventures and so many things. And unfortunately, I think like you guys saw in my first video, I was explaining how, there's so many things that I've been through that I wasn't able to film. That sucks that I wasn't able to film, but hey, it prepared me to be able to film today, to be able to take you guys places that are controversial or just anything. And the sense of maturity, and I know the success is going to come to me. The success that's going to come to me now, I am 100% prepared, 100% mature enough to be able to handle it. The criticism, the ups and downs with it, the challenges, I'm ready for that. I am 100% ready for it, and it's funny because this is where I identify with Habib, Islam, and Hazma, and all these UFC fighters and all these fighters around the world, and I grew up watching Bruce Lee, and I grew up watching Chuck Norris, Seagal, all these fighters, and I identify with them in the fact that you have to be ready mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, environmentally, and everything possible to be able to face the toughest things that are going to challenge you, that will even take you to the brink of death. And that's why I am able to come here to Chechnya, to Dagestan. We're about to go to Dagestan as well, to Russia in the time of war. I'm not too far from Ukraine. I honestly, I feel comfortable in these areas because of everything that I've been through, which we haven't even been able to get to everything. And I know this video is long, and I apologize, and that's why I'm making it a 2-part series. But guys, I've been everything in life, environmentally, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically. I believe that you're a product of your environment, environment's a product of you. Everything brought me into becoming who I am today, into doing what I do today, into being this vlogger, being this YouTuber, being this person to speak to you in a certain way, convey what I convey. my goal is not only publish this book, which you already know is so important. My goal is to just help humanity progress and just do my best. And so I put myself in the front line to experience everything and make all the mistakes, find all the solutions, learn, succeed, win, lose, however you want to call it. I put myself in the situation so I could learn and pass it on to you guys at the end of the day. You know, in hopes where I could help a God help humanity. You know, because I should have been dead. To me, I should have been dead. And the 5 major accidents from the time I was 20 to 25, that's not the only things I've lived. There's so many more things in which we're going to be able to, you know, get to know each other, or get to know, you'll be able to get to know me more as, you know, this video, as this channel progresses. But I wanted to take the time to tell you guys at least that about my life. Although I know it was a long video and I apologize. I'm so sorry that, you know, I talk so much, but I just feel it was right now the right time to let you guys know of what makes me me and what puts me into the situation I'm in now in Chechnya. Why am I studying Chechnya and Dagestan in Russia right now in these times of war? I just feel like it is the perfect opportunity for me to challenge myself, to do what I've always done, to show you guys that another side of humanity. You know, I mean, what better chance to show you the other side of humanity than during a time of war? Show you how the people live, show you how the people are, you know, because so many people think that because there's a war, there has to be a bad guy, there has to be an enemy, there has to be this evil person. And in this case, there's so many U.S. advisories telling foreigners to not travel to Russia, especially not in Chechnya, especially not in the mountains of Mount Elbrus, the mountains, these Caucasus mountains, and yeah, don't go to Chechnya, don't go to Dagestan, especially. And I just find it really weird that, you know, Hazma and Khabib are from these parts, and you know, and I'm challenging myself and I'm putting myself in situations where I could prove that these advisories, these things between nations are mostly political. And I want us to separate ourselves. I want our beliefs to be able to separate ourselves in knowing that one thing is political and one thing is the people. And I could only speak for the people. I can only show you the people. Whatever happens between governments, whatever happens between kingdoms, that's them. You know, and I understand that they're human as well, that they come from families as well, and that the families that they come from, they have a duty to do as well as being these leaders. And it's not easy. It's not easy to be these people in power. I understand that, you know, things are generational as well, and their families and these people that have great success and big businesses and etc. I understand that generational wealth and that generational knowledge was passed down. So why would they not want to keep it going? You know, so I understand that as well. I don't just go around walking and hating on them because, oh, you know, you're born into, it's not their fault either. Everybody, no one controls the family that they go into or the power that they go into or anything. They just are born into it. And this is what I was born into. Okay? And I want you guys to understand that. I want you to understand you know, as we go out and study humanity and just live and just experience and entertainment and all this stuff that comes with vlogging, just keep in mind, every single human being you see and every single animal you see as well, they came from a family. So you have to understand who that family may be and why they do that, what they do. Some people are just used to it, you know, and they just feel like that's what's right because they have parents to please as well. They have a God to please as well, you know. They have land to please as well. They have people, They have families. So they're going to do their best in whatever they can and whatever they believe is correct. And what's correct to them is what feels good, and what feels good is usually making your parents proud, yourself proud, God proud, and others, those are around you, proud as well. So keep that in mind. But I'm done talking so much. Now it's time to go get the train tickets so we could go and head to Verdovsky, a part of Chechnya where Hazmat Shemaev is from. And now we're just going to go ahead and go to the part of Chechnya where Hazmat Shemaev is from, or Kazmat Shemaev is from, the UFC fighter. And I'm hoping that they're going to be able to give us tickets. I know I took this time where I was supposed to be buying the tickets, but I just felt this was more important than going and getting tickets I know I'm going to be able to get. And also, we still have a lot of time here in Chechnya and Dagestan. So make sure to like and subscribe, guys. I love you guys. I apologize for talking so much. Hopefully you guys now got a gist of who I am and what puts me in this position to do what I do and what brought me to Chechnya as well. Hopefully I did a good explanation. And just remember that, what I'm doing is not for everybody. And those that are inspired by these videos to do the same thing, please be careful if you do decide to do it. Remember, it's not as easy. These are the times of war. Please be careful. I advise, anybody that cannot keep a form of respect and has a little bit of arrogance and thinks they could do whatever they want to do, to not come over here, not do any of this, because these are sensitive times, and a lot of people have PTSD and the protectors of their land, and you cannot just come and disrespect. It's not just only because of their culture, not only because of their religion, but because of the times of war, they are on edge. So keep that in mind. Be careful. Love you guys, and let's see where this all goes, and let's keep enjoying and exploring Chechnya and Dagestan. Love you guys. Talk to you later. Make sure you like, subscribe, and let's go.